in a cash game.
It's like Mayweather said after that Victor Ortiz knockout when he went, just protect yourself at all times. I mean,
that was grimy to me, but we won't go down that path. That's a conversation for a later
Like I said before, is protect yourself at all times. I got to bet, yes.
That was grimy. And I feel like it's grimy in a cash game. But to say you got me or you got it or I can't call or any of these sorts of things.
If you look somebody in the eyes and you're like, you got me, and then you get a read and you're, no, you don't call. Yes, it's a little grimy, but at the same time, I wouldn't do it. I'm not advocating for angle shots, but it is protect yourself at all times.
So fair
I
or
would
foul?
always say, foul in an icky, moral way.
Fair in a technical way?
I don't know if it can be defined with just the fair and foul. It's gross, but it is protect yourself at all times. Make sure they fold if you're out there, if you're not sure.
Mikita's not looking to protect himself as he has flatted Negreanu's 5K open with 2 9s, or perhaps it is in the interest of protecting himself.
No,
or his chips, rather.
I can really do
not looking to bloat it pre.
I was thinking like either bet in the dark or check in the dark, but none makes sense.
in the dark would be sick.
Neither makes sense.
Like throw out 15K, that'd be sick.
Yeah, 15, just bet pot in the dark? I don't know, man. I have to look, see what comes. Okay, we've got some to work with here, right? You and me. Let's go. We got 6s, we got 7s, we got 8s, we got straight draws, we got flush draws, we got all kinds. So, what we got to do here is put one blue chip in. Go ahead.
5 9.
I can think of a card that would create some spiciness.
Or more, it's up to you.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah, definitely.
That, of course, the king of clubs.
I know. I'm not asking for advice.
And the next table to break.
Yeah, I did, though. Yeah, he's a Oh, man. You don't like that bet?
So,
I can't ask
is the next to break. It
is the next to break.
Okay.
In the event that we break it.
Against the rules. Rules.
Dad's weighs his options.
You should.
Comes to
Okay,
16.
fine. 16,000. This guy, I knew it. I knew this frickin' flop he was gonna
Daniel
do that.
calls. No, Daniel.
Oh,
under the gun
don't do it to me, man.
Kind of
Come on, I
wrapping
got
the
good
here.
cards.
He can have some of the stuff like this, but
Give me what I need.
does have some big pairs here, given this line. And
Wow.
in she comes.
And Negreanu knuckles, by the way, turns the stone nuts, and it's going to look a lot like he's worried about the 4-liner here with his range.
Naturally, of course. Negreanu can have 10-10. He can have the Jack 10 suited.
Feel it. So good.
I think Bats bets this, Nick.
right now.
It's a great hand. We see
Yeah, buddy.
it's a little under a 3-1 dog running into the absolute disaster bazooka of the world.
You think he just checks back so he can call all bets on the end?
Aces, kings, and queens are now bowing out. We might be well served to check.
9's full on the
Well,
end
the turn
from Mikita,
brought it
knuckled
away,
the turn
and the
out.
river brings it back in. And yeah, tough one for Daniel.
Switch it up now.
It's actually going to be tough for Daniel to give Mikita credit for a boat. The nut straight is strong here.
Not that many boats, Zoe. Exactly right. It's very strong.
I played good cards.
That's right. That's a very
Pretty good cards. Good cards.
60,000.
That's really bad news for me. Ooh, I was going to do it to you really, for real, on the turn. I was really going to do it to you on the turn. All right, I need a minute for this one.
If he folds this, Ali,
And what did you bet on the flop?
I'll be pretty blown
16,
away.
16, 32. So none of that matters. You either got it or you don't. Question is, what could you have that?
It is under the gun 1.
Full house makes
Guarding
a
the
lot of
positions.
sense, right?
7-handed.
I'm going to use one of these because I'm going to take my time. So, full house. Which full house? Let's see, 7s or 8s? 7s or 6s? 6s or 7s? You would check back the turn for sure. 60,000 now. I think my hand might be too good to fold, but ho-hum.
Let it go one time, Daniel.
What do you have, though? Raise me on that flop. Not that, because you bet. Yeah, I think you just have a full house, bro.
Whoa.
Or a really solid, crazy next level bluff. Or maybe you just have a 10.
That's the thing. Weird.
See what you're in.
10 seconds.
Does he come with this
I still haven't
fold?
made up my mind yet, so I'll use it.
No, he comes with
All
the
right,
second
take my
time
turn.
extension.
So, get on in. I raised, that was the button, so I was under the gun here. Budyakovsky. Good player. Good player. Bet less I would have paid a long time ago.
60 into
I'm gonna
47.
try to win, like you said. You know, but I'm trying to win. Otherwise, I wouldn't use two of those.
10 seconds.
Oh, do it, Daniel. What a fold.
I thought he
Wow.
had sevens or sixes.
Fours?
Find out.
6,
Beauty.
6, 7. That could be it.
You start to
But I
reconstruct
don't
on
do
the,
much. I mean, I beat a 10. If he had a 10, I would have
on the heels of Negreanu's analysis.
Yeah.
What's
What did
under
you
the
say?
gun?
You beat a straight.
Gun 1.
Yeah.
You had 10 jack?
Gita does have those pocket pairs.
No, you didn't.
I did.
You folded 10 jack.
That was
I did.
tremendous. Bravo. Here.
I'm
So, in this situation, we are doing quite well in chips. There is ICM factor involved. I believe we were at 2 tables, so a decent amount of shorter-ish stacks that are going to give a little more credit to under the gun raises. So Jack 10 of hearts is certainly a hand we're going to have in our opening range under the gun. You know, it's very important when you are opening the gun to have a range that can have some board coverage, right? So if you only have a range constructed of like your premiums, then you become far too easy to play post-flop. So we're going to throw some in there. We're not going to throw them all in there. Like, we're not going to have Jack 8 suited in there. Probably Jack 9 suited, maybe. It's like on the borderline. Jack 10 suited is a slam dunk, always raising this hand, especially at a shortish table. Now Nikita Budyakovsky, he flats under the gun +1. At this point, that's going to be a very strong range. With players behind, left to act, and relatively short stacks that can jam, you would expect that Makita's going to have a range that can often call a jam if somebody else does, like squeeze. So that range is going to consist of a decent amount of pocket pairs, suited broadways like queen jack suited, king queen suited, maybe even queen jack suited is right on the borderline. He's going to have ace queen a decent amount, ace king some, and he's also going to be slow playing aces and kings. He can have jacks, he can have tens. He could also have some smaller pairs like sixes, fives, fours, whatever. What you don't expect to see too often are a ton of suited connectors calling in that spot, unless maybe, you know, it's 9-10 suited, it's 8-9 suited. Like, some of those will call, I believe, as well. But that's now where you're thinking, like, not all combos of that would call. So he's definitely going to be overall weighted towards quite strong, right? Some board coverage with some weaker hands in that calling range, but mostly you're looking at a premium heavy range that calls in this spot. So that's fine. Now it folds around to the big blind, who folds, and the flop comes 8-7-6. So first thought is this flop good for my range or his? I think it's actually quite close. Again, because he does have, you know, pocket 8s, pocket 7s, pocket 6s, but so do we. And I think we probably have, I don't know, I'm not even sure about this one. I'm going to have to run this because I'm trying to think like which, because his range also in this spot has aces and kings as well. Because a lot of players under the gun +1 against the under the gun raise will slow play that to protect their calling range, which can open them up to playing more hands that offer board coverage like 7-8 suited and things like that. So we're betting here, we're at the bottom of our range, right? So often in a lot of spots you want to be betting the top and the bottom of your range and kind of checking the middle. This is a spot where we really can't have a worse hand than this in terms of the rank of hand, right? We have jack high right now, right? When you think of our opening range under the gun, sure, we might have 5-6 suited, 6-7 suited, but all those hands made a pair, right? We might have ace-3 suited, but guess what? That beats jack 10. King-queen beats jack 10. So there really isn't a hand worse than we have in terms of where we rank it in our range, right? Everything else that we would have right now beats it beats us. So this is, generally speaking, going to be a good hand to throw to bluff with. You also do block some combos of, you know, I don't know if he has 10-8 of hearts or jack 8 of hearts necessarily, but you block jacks, you block pocket jacks and pocket 10s, which are both hands that he could flat there and, you know, be comfortable with after this flop. And again, we block some 9-10 suited as well. So it's a good hand to go ahead and bet with. We do. Now we're facing a raise. The raise is quite small. We are definitely getting pot odds to peel here to try to catch the 9. Also, as I said in the old school video as well, you know, there are some runouts where we could turn this hand into a bluff as well, you know, if it runs favorably. An ace or a king could be that card. right? If he does have something like nines, and we put a lot of pressure on him when a king or an ace comes, that could that could win us a pot with the old nothing. So we go ahead and call the raise, and now the turn card is a 9. And generally speaking, in these spots, you don't really have a leading range that you can balance. Okay, so if you call this raise and just lead this turn, it's very, very difficult. And a solver may do it like 1-2% of the time. And that's a solver that can compute like super advanced calculations like in a second, or not even a second. It takes hours sometimes for a solver to solve it all the way down. So a human brain can't really do that. So it's generally a rule. In the spots where like, you should be checking 99% of the time, you should just always check, right? Because you're not going to be able to balance the 1%. That is if you're not trying to play from an exploitative perspective against a weaker player or something like that. So in this case, it's always going to be a check for us. And now Makita checks back. Okay? We were certainly planning on check raising here on this turn, but that play is now out the window because the river is an 8. Okay? Now the real question is to value bet or straight or check, with the intention of check calling, check raising, not really check folding, right? Or maybe. So, leading here certainly makes a lot of sense in a lot of spots. So does checking, though. Like in terms of value, like you figure if you do lead here, you could probably lead for like 2/3 pot, something like that. Or maybe even less. Maybe because the board is 4-straighted, you could lead for like quarter pot and you could target some like weak 1-pair hands like, if he did have, well, what the hell, what kind of 1-pair hands? Like maybe ace-8 suited or something like that we could target with a smaller bet. But overall, I decide that I think there's more value in checking with the intention of check call against some weaker hands, right? So if I check and he bets 2/3 pot, we just call. If he bets quarter pot, I probably would go ahead and check raise this hand because my hand is too high up in my range to just check call against a small bet. So against the small, I'm check raising. Against the big, 2/3 pot, I'm calling. But what am I doing against an overbet, which you don't expect, right? So now my opponent's overbet. So what do we know about overbets? We discussed this in a video recently. When someone overbets, they are telling you one of two things. I have a really, 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 really good hand. Or I really have absolutely nothing. There's no middling hand. Like when he overbets here, I eliminate for a 10 from his range. Like not just having like a random 10, like ace 10 or something like that, for just the 10 high straight. I can almost eliminate all of those combos, right? Sure, there's a chance that he has a 10, but we do block one as well, right? So that leaves only 3 10s left. And now you have to couple the fact that he'd raise flop, check back turn, and overbet this river with just a 10 in his hand. And that's a really unlikely scenario and an unlikely 9 for just a 10 to overbet here. So that leaves us with trying to figure out what are his value combos that are representing this for this size, and then what are his bluffs? Well, his value combos all are, let's say, if we give him some 7-8 suiteds, maybe, pocket 6s, pocket 7s, some 8-9 suited, maybe pocket 9s. Well, these are all the full houses, right? There's plenty of combos of full houses that go along with the story of him calling under the gun, +1, right? So we think about his range being quite condensed. It's quite condensed to pocket pairs, 6s, 7s, 8s, some suited connectors, but what else? Premiums like aces, kings, queens. He's not going to do that. He's not going to turn that into a bluff on this river. Doesn't make any sense. He might make a small value bet with aces or something like that, but he's never going to overbet bluff with like jacks, queens, kings, or aces. So we can eliminate all those too, right? So now, think about it for a second. He called under the gun +1. We've already narrowed that range down, right? So what are what one bluff could be? 6-7 suited, maybe, right? Often what a solver would like to do when you have the bottom 2 pair and a higher card pairs on top of that, you block all the full house combos, or you block a lot of them. So often a solver would like to turn that hand into a bluff. So we'll give him 6-7, for example, as one bluff possibility. Literally the only one. And then what else? Queen jack suited? King queen suited? Ace queen? Those don't make a ton of sense to flat there and raise that flop. I mean, it could, but it seems like a very low frequency. Overall, I think you can see where I'm getting at, right? Very few bluffs here for that size. Whole bunch of value in full houses, right? So because he overbet, right, he's telling us he's either got a really, really good hand or a really, really bad hand. The thing is, there are so many really, really good hands and almost no really, really bad hands, which allows us to make a fold that nobody at the table believed I did. Brian Rass says, wait, you folded 10 jack? I'm like, yeah, right? Because it's not, in theory, in theory, I'm too high up in my range to make that fold. But when you add the extra layer of breaking down his range and realizing that his bluffs just don't really exist all that much, you can go ahead and make a really big laydown. But what's interesting about this hand, as I said, is if he bets 2/3 pot, then he can have a 10. He could have a 5. He could have pocket 5s and value bet there. If he bets quarter pot, he could have aces and kings and queens. So against those sizes, notice that the range widens, right? So when you overbet, your range is limited to really, really good hands and really bad hands. Then when you lower the bet size to say quarter pot, your range is like tons of stuff. It's really bad hands, it's really good hands, it's all the hands in the middle, which makes it impossible to fold my hand against. But because of the size that he chose, got a little greedy, and I don't think he thought about this well enough to realize that like he is not balanced here. I think he was trying to exploit me, frankly, in this spot, rather than actually use a game theory optimal size, because I don't think he chose one. I think based on the way the hand played, with me checking, well, calling raise and flop, check turn, check river, I don't think that his range supports an overbet at all in that spot. So I think that a little bit of greed on his part allowed me to get away from it. But it's an interesting hand, right? In that I'm check raising against the quarter pot, because that range includes a lot of like marginal value hands. I'm just calling against 2/3 pot, and I'm folding against an overbet. Poker's awesome, huh? Especially when you learn how to play it at a deep level. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I think this was one of my better reads that I actually went through with and followed, because again, nobody would have faulted me for just check calling there. It's fine, just bad beat, right? But sometimes, if you think at a deeper level, you can avoid some of these bad beats, or you can make them less bad by making a very sharp fold in a tough spot.